right motivation and determination and drive, and they're just killing it. And so that's what it comes down to. It's not so much, I mean, yes, you need some basics in real estate education, but it's what's your determination and drive. And especially as the market seems to be getting more and more competitive over the last few years. I mean, what the internet has done for real estate investing, I was thinking back just over the last 20 years. When I started, we didn't have the internet. It was, it was just starting to come in 2000, but not.
Even I was using it.
Yeah, well, but
it was there.
Now you're inundated with ads or stuff in Facebook group messaging. I mean, I'm a member of wholesaling groups, investment groups, landlord groups. RIA groups, and there's so much information. It's like, how do you cut through that? And, being an investor starting out 20 years ago and kind of just going on, I subscribe to the KISS philosophy, the keep it simple, stupid. And, I really like the back to basics. I mean, what I do isn't rocket science from an investment standpoint. From the lending standpoint, which we'll get into next week, that's a little more complicated. But from the, I'm buying something, I'm adding value, and I'm reselling it. And, I've never been one to involve myself with lease options, subject to deals. I've done a 1031. It was a little more complicated than I thought, and it didn't have the tax savings that I ultimately thought in the end. But I like keeping things simple. And, I think I've kind of done that. I haven't, any of the deals that I've been involved in, I've tried to maximize the value on, whether it was working with a developer on selling a piece of land, or just really improving the properties, or leasing up a property and selling it. I've tried to keep it pretty simple, and it's worked for me.
Well, you seem to be very happy and satisfied with the results, and so you're working on now your fifth. You said this is going to be the fifth, your personal fifth home that you're going to redo.
Yeah, so I came down to Florida 5 years ago. I was actually I was driving around with one of our borrowers, and I was new to the Florida area, and I didn't know anything about Sarasota at the time. And he said, "Oh, you should bid on this property." And so it was a bank-owned auction property, and it was up on the auction. And I ended up bidding on it, and I lost the bid by $15,000. But the bank reached out to me 2 weeks later, and they said, "Do you want it?" And I'm like, "Absolutely, I want it." So we closed on it, and a week later I flew down with a bag of tools and a bag of clothes, and I started snowbirding down here, and also building the business down here. In terms of I was looking to branch out. My partner and I had just teamed up. This is back in 2014, and my partner and I were looking to expand the lending business. And so I had snowbirded down here for a few years, and then with the new tax laws that took effect back in 2017, it made sense for me to kind of pull out of and sell my place up in Connecticut and become a full-time resident of Florida. And so I did that. And so the clock's been running on my property here in Sarasota for a couple years now, so I would qualify for Section 121 on this property. And so at any time now, if I'm looking to kind of, I feel like kind of the property's been the value's been maximized. It was it was a bank owned. It needed updating. Everything got updated inside. We've kind of maximized the property value on it. So if I were to hold it for another few years, I don't think I would get the additional bump the way that I did from just kind of taking advantage of buying a distressed property from the bank and fixing it up. And obviously, you've been down here. I think you got to Florida about the same time that I did.
About the same time.
Yeah,
2015, but right in there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, great time to come down, and I mean everything kind of just went straight up, and so really dynamic market to be in, and it's worked well.
And the weather was so hard to adjust to.
I know, it's tough. It's there's a lot of haters up north that don't like my Facebook posts, but I figure, hey, they've got the option to come down here. They just haven't taken advantage of it. So don't blame me for your inaction. Your ability to not act.
Don't be angry with me for my happiness.
Yeah, no, it's a great area, and I happened to luck into it. It was really just. And I'm down here, and we grew the business down here because of a simple Facebook post, which is absolutely mind-boggling to me.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, what was that?
That was so I had one of the houses that I had built back in 2000 and when did I finish that? 2007, I think. I finished building basically right at the crash, and I had lived in it for a couple years, again trying to take advantage of 121, and I couldn't sell it. I had it on the market for 4 years off and on, and it just wasn't moving. It was a bigger house, and so I decided to put the property up on Airbnb. It was a 4-bedroom, 2-story colonial, about 3,000 square feet, and it was just me living in it. and I don't need that kind of. I built it for an investment, and I don't need that kind of space. So I put it up on Airbnb, and the first guest that I ever had was actually an REO listing broker down in Sarasota, and so he showed up, and we drove around, and we were like two peas in a pod, and I was showing him real estate all day, and then he came back to Florida. We became Facebook friends, and then a few years later, he put something up on Facebook. Hey, I'm looking for a hard money loan, willing to pay X. It's a fantastic property west of the trail, and I couldn't get my phone out fast enough to call him. And I said, hey, you know what I do, right? And
and he did. Had he forgotten, or did he?
No, I don't think he knew. I may not. Maybe he didn't see my posts on Facebook. But I maybe he didn't either remember or know what I did at that point.
Isn't
but he's
that
like,
something?
oh, well, hey, you're the perfect guy I want to talk to. He's like, why don't you, let's fly you down and let's go look at real estate, and you tell me what you're going to lend me on stuff. So that's actually how I ended up down here. So it was kind of a fluke off of one post on Facebook.
And can I ask you a quick question about that? When you're doing the long-term investing but you don't get the advantage because you haven't lived there, but it's still long-term investing, is that tax back depending on whether you're a corporation or an LLC? Flow-through entity or not, I guess is what I'm saying. Is that taxed back at your personal rate, or is that taxed at a corporate rate?
So on the everybody that buys a property as their personal residence, if they think they're going to, I think it needs to be in your personal name. I'm not sure. You'd probably want to check with your CPA, but it's just an exemption that you're going to take on your tax return if you've lived in it for 2 years.
Right.
If it's less than 2 years, you categorize. My understanding is, and what I've done is I categorize it as a long-term capital gain. So I've got to put my cost basis in and my sale price, and whatever that gain is runs through my tax return, and I'll just pay the long-term capital gain rate on it. If it's less than a year, my understanding is that it's going to fall into basically the equivalent of earned income. Or whatever your nominal tax rate is.
Okay.
So that again, CPA. I just know that the short term. You're not paying self-employment tax on it, but it would be a short-term capital gain that's taxed at your nominal rate. Is my understanding on it. So.
I thought it was different, but that's all right. That's something. Well, obviously, we're not going to get to everything we wanted to get to today. So. I really want to make sure I want you to come back next week, and we'll have part 2, and we'll explore subjects like investment capital, fix and flip capital, bridge financing, creative financial flexibility, and some many other intriguing topics about money and how it works for you.
Yeah, I look forward to sharing that info with you and talking some more, Maggie Rose. Thank you.
You're welcome. This has been Real Estate Hotwired with Maggie Rose March. I want to thank our guest, Robert Parker from Flip It Funding, and thank you, our audience, for listening. If you have any questions or comments, please contact me at maggierosemarch.com or realestatehotwired@gmail.com. Thank you.
This has been Real Estate Hotwired with Maggie Rose March. Please stay tuned for more with Robert Parker from Flip It Funding. If you have any questions or comments, please contact her at maggierosemarch.com or realestatehotwired@gmail.com.